An independent review suggests England's schools inspectorate Ofsted was defensive and complacent in its response to the suicide of the head teacher Ruth Perry. She killed herself in January 2023 while waiting for the publication of a report that would downgrade her school to inadequate. Ofsted's chief inspector has accepted most of the review's recommendations, which include better mental health training and support for inspectors.
The Chief Inspector of Ofsted, the schools watchdog in England, will be with us live just before 8 as a report is published that is deeply critical of the organisation's response to the suicide of head teacher Ruth Perry in January last year. Aina Aslam, our correspondent, is here with us in a studio. How critical is the report?
So defensive and complacent, that's how the independent review has described Ofsted's response to Ruth Perry's death, the head teacher who took her life while waiting for a report that downgraded her school in Reading from outstanding to inadequate. Now, Dame Christine Gilbert's damning review found a climate of fear and frustration around inspections that had been building for years, it says. It says in the months after Miss Perry's suicide, Ofsted made no attempt to contact her family or send a letter of condolence. And despite senior leaders knowing about the death, many staff and board members weren't told about it. Instead, the review says Ofsted seemed to assume it had done nothing wrong and that the failure to critically reflect increased damage to its reputation. Dame Christine said Ofsted's culture needs to be more open if it wants to learn from the tragedy, and that the watchdog needs to move away from the discourse that inspectors are never wrong.
And she has made a whole series of recommendations, most of which Ofsted has already said it's accepting.
Yeah, that's right. So some of them, she said there needs to be better communication in crisis situations, more external oversight over complaints and surveys. She called for more mental health training for inspectors to spot when school staff are distressed or anxious, and noted that this needs to be designed to reflect the unique power dynamic of inspection. She also said some people had raised concerns that management appeared to chase a greater volume of inspections over quality because of recent budget cuts. She said this should be the other way around to give inspections a more human face. Now, as you say, Ofsted's chief inspector, Sir Martyn Oliver, has accepted most of the review's findings. He said it was difficult to strike the balance between reducing unnecessary pressure on the schools they work with while calling out poor practice and low standards without fear or favor. But he said it was now time to act.
Aina Aslam, thank you very much, and Sir Martyn will join us at 10 to 8. The suicide of head teacher Ruth Perry shone a light on a climate of fear and frustration around inspection which had been building for years. That is part of the independent report that has been published today. It was commissioned after a coroner ruled that an inspection of Ruth Perry's school, which she knew was about to publicly state that it was going from outstanding to inadequate, contributed to her death. Ruth Perry had told her husband after the inspection that she thought the lead inspector was a bully and had come to school with an agenda. After her suicide, one parent at the school said his child had asked if all her teachers were going to die now. Well, Sir Martyn Oliver is the man who commissioned Dame Christine Gilbert's independent report. He is now the Chief Inspector of Ofsted, which regulates schools in England. Good morning, Sir Martyn.
Good morning.
First of all, do you accept this judgment that there was a climate of fear around inspections?
Well, I commissioned that report, as you said, and indeed I commissioned the Big Listen, which is a comprehensive survey, independent surveys, Ofsted-owned surveys, the largest ever in our history, which is a great moment now for us to rebuild, reduce pressure in the sectors in which we work, but to maintain those standards and to rebuild and reset a brighter future.
And in answer to my question, do you accept the judgment that there was a climate of fear around inspections?
Well, certainly. I was a head teacher myself, and you could certainly feel the pressure of inspections. And
that's not the same as a climate of fear, is it? That's a very, very strong judgment that Dame Christine found.
She did, and I've accepted her report because holding schools to account, not just schools. Your viewers or your listeners, will think about Ofsted inspecting schools, but we inspect and regulate early years and colleges, 92,000 settings across the country. And the important thing is that we hold those to account and that we do make sure that children get the best care and education in the system possible. But we need to do that in a way which is commensurate and allows staff to actually be the professionals working settings for the best of children. But where it is unacceptably low standard, we do have to call that out. That is the tough part of our job.
Yeah, and everyone will understand that it needs to be rigorous. That is the nature of a watchdog. But what we've learned from this report about the behaviour of the organisation, I appreciate that this is in the period before you were in charge of it, but to make no attempt to contact the family after this suicide or send a letter of condolence, to not inform the board, which is meant to hold the senior leadership to this account. The report says Ofsted assumed it had done nothing wrong.
So that's why I commissioned, along with my chair, this report. And so that report by Dame Christine Gilbert, we're very grateful for Dame Christine Gilbert undertaking this serious review into us. And alongside the Big Listen, that was the point. Let's make sure that we understand that we can build now a much better future, and we can do far better for parents and children out there and give them more information about the settings in which we inspect and regulate.
Yes, and I understand that that's part of the future and what changes from now on. But now that we know these details about the attitude of Ofsted at this time, how can we see it as an organisation that was capable of making good judgments on schools when it made such bad judgments at this moment, which should have been a moment of crisis?
Well, again, I wasn't there, and so I can't talk about that, but I can look at Dame Christine Gilbert's review and, as I have, accept the findings which she made. That's why I commissioned that review. What I can do, though, is make sure that we focus on building a better future. And let's remember, we do thousands, tens of thousands of inspections, and the vast, vast majority of them go exceptionally well, and we get great feedback. And indeed, in some of the survey responses and in Dame Christine Gilbert's review, there are plenty of mentions about how things have improved, not just since I took over, but they've been improving since my predecessor made some changes. So we know that we can make a difference, and we will continue to make a difference for children.
Have you spoken to Ruth Perry's family yourself?
Yes, I met them on my second day in office. It was the first meeting that I held back in January when I started.
And how did you feel after that, hearing from them directly?
Well, it was a shocking moment. Professor Waters is very courageous.
Her sister?
Yes, that's Ruth's sister, and very courageous. And I was very grateful. And then Professor Waters has had other conversations with me. She's brought other head teachers in to see me and to meet me. And we've spoken and had exchanges. But the important thing now is that we make those changes. It's not just about listening, it's about action. I took action in January, and I recognise that Professor Waters said that they may have made a difference, and I hope that the changes I've made now will make a difference, but still make sure that we're giving parents the best information, we're raising standards, and children are getting the best education and care out there.
There is one aspect of Dame Christine's recommendations that you don't seem to have accepted in full, and that's about post-inspection surveys being administered through a third-party independent organisation. Why is that not suitable?
Well, because it's an incredibly expensive exercise to do, and I need to place our very limited resources.
Okay. So if it was funded, you'd do it?
So if it was funded, it would be something that we would consider. But in the meantime, what we set out as a comprehensive response to that recommendation, we already have an independent body called ICASO, the Independent Complaints About Ofsted, that schools can go straight to, and other providers. But we also have introduced panels where we bring trade unions, external representatives onto those panels. And there's an example in that report where we talk about 4 of them have happened already. And the external bodies that have seen the way that we handle our complaints have been incredibly complimentary about the rigour and the consistency of our judgments. So we know that we do great work. Our inspectors are diligent, hard-working people. And let's remember, the vast majority of Ofsted's inspectors are out there working in schools alongside His Majesty's inspectors, our full-time employees. They're expert, and they know what is a good school or a good provider.
Sir Martyn Oliver, Chief Inspector of Ofsted, thank you.